thank you. Thank you for being with us today. Today I have with me Professor Emeritus Ben Dziegielewski. I said it right. Thank you. And this is part of our series events that are part of the 50th anniversary of the International Water Resources Association interviews. We're trying to collect the history and the experiences of the institution, and the best way to do that is through the leaders of back of the back history of the last 50 years, and you are one of them. So thank you for agreeing to be part of this celebration. So I'm gonna start talking a little bit about your experience with IWRA. Right now, you're a professor at Emeritus professor at Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. You joined IWRA in 1987, so you've been with us 34 years. You've been executive director of IWRA. You've been editor of Water International, editor of IWRA Update newsletter as well, and treasurer from 2007, 2008. Am I missing anything in terms of your collaboration with IWRA?
Yes, and after the office moved, I was elected to executive board as treasurer and to just oversee the transfer of funds and all this financial stuff that was going on.
Okay, so you've been quite a while with us. So my first question would be, if you were to describe IWRA from the 80s, which is when you started, to compared to today, what IWRA is, what would you say?
Oh, there is a big difference between what it was in the 80s. Now it's a seems like much better organized and managed organization than it used to be, because when my university and myself, we put a bid to move the office in 1998. But before then, I mean, I met at meetings and met some people from executive board, you know, and actually the person I knew best was Glenn Stout, Dr. Glenn Stout from University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, who was running executive office, and later on he also served as president of IWRA. But it was a little tough going. I think we were entering a phase where there were some difficulties, you know. I mean, with organizations, and I may dive into it more maybe later if you wish.
I guess the challenges from back then and the challenges that you see today, what is the big difference?
Well, when I took over as executive director, my challenge was to rebuild the association, because it seems like it was sort of down. Why was it down? And we were losing membership, and it seems was really hard to get new members, you know, and the reason for that was because, at least in my mind, is because we created, you know, the World Water Council. I mean, and it really started in 1994 World Water Congress held in Cairo, in Egypt. And our executive board and our president, Dr. Mahmoud Abu Zaid, was sort of organized a session, I mean, to propose this organization. And so remember, I took over in 1998, where World Water Council was really getting started, at that time. But so we created this new organization that of much greater scope and global, and all water organizations were supportive of it. All professionals said, yes, we need a global organization because we have 8 or 10 water groups, like IWRA. Why don't we have one together, like umbrella organization? But that was not, once we created it and it was incorporated 2 years later in Paris, I think, in France, we found out that there was some overlap with IWRA. They decided to create a new journal. We didn't like that. We already had Water International, long-standing journal since 1975, and but somehow we couldn't stop it. They said they're going to call it water policy. They're going to focus on policy, and we were much broader scope. So that went by. Then they decided at some point to take individual members, of the World Water Council with some kind of, entry requirement. We did object to that at the time. Our president, Benedito Braga from Brazil, was talking to Dr. Abu Zaid and saying, look, you can't take members. IWRA is a multi-professional organization. We only take individual members. Whole our idea is to have individual members. You're supposed to be only have institutional members. And that's how it happened. Yeah. Eventually we convinced them to drop this idea of taking individual members because we were having difficulty, enrolling new members at the time. And World Water Council was overshadowing us pretty much. That was understandable because they got much more money. They received millions of support dollars, to create World Water Forum. And we had to really fight for our place at the table, which we did fine. Our president at that time, Benedito Braga, Ben Braga, did very well. We got the place at the table and prominent, role in the World Water Council. But it took some work, and but even though we at the high level we were able to fight for our interests and the association, the membership suffered. I tried really hard while executive director to increase membership, but it was almost impossible because people were confused. They were saying, why do I need to be a member of IWRA if we have World Water Council? We duplicated, people were not sure. So it took us a long time, I think, to rebuild the association. And actually, it wasn't me really who rebuilt it. It was who came after me, like Dr. Cecilia Tortajada and Mr. Antibilek, the next president, and that was. It took a long time to get, in my mind, to get where IWRA is today, and I am really pleased to see how well the association is doing.
Okay, so in terms of the water agenda back in the days and compared to today's water agenda, where do you see the main differences?
Yeah, the earlier water agenda was, at least IWRA agenda was it was basically networking and academic and professional publications like in Water International and organizing World Water Congress. And that's, by the way, that's another term that we lost, the World Water Council. And I even try in England or in France to put a trademark on it, but they couldn't agree to it. We really wanted them to not take our, title of our Congress, but they said it's generic. So our agenda was more traditional. And I think the way the agenda changed for IWRA changed agenda, as I see it, much more for greater engagement, and use of social media and use of the computer technologies. Now it's just, I didn't have it. I mean, I had the first, I put together the first website, which my doctoral student, who was also learning, put it up, and that was a great achievement in my mind. Then I did scan all the journal into archive, I was just at the beginning of it, to try to get online presence for us. And we did, I thought at the time we did fine, but compared today to all the webinars and all the things you have on the site, I'm really impressed. This is what we should be going. It's very important to increase this kind of communication, and also a greater increase for participation from young professional students, for sure. As far as the world agenda on water, the way I see it is that World Water Council moved to action. It's like the Millennium Development Goals, and getting money, getting ministers to make commitments, We did not do it because we were not that powerful, or to try to call a ministerial conference, and extract promises from people. We should try it, on some aspects, but I think that World Water Council and provided this sort of let's do something agenda, let's organize governments to do better in water. That's I appreciate very much, because I think that's important. We still a scientific organization, we are generating new knowledge and distributing new knowledge, and also networking with professionals across the world. And if we need to do some agenda, acting agenda, we do it through professionals. We don't do it necessarily, through getting funding and making commitments. I mean, extracting commitments from governments.
Now, in terms of the water challenges out there, I know that you describe a little bit the current challenge of climate change,
Yes.
which is basically what is driving everybody's agendas. But more specifically, what are the topics that you would see as different from back in the 80s, I guess, and today? What were we talking about those days in IWRA, and how is that compared to today?
Oh, we were talking about primarily in water basin management, new approaches to water management that were more holistic and with greater emphasis on environmental impacts. But we were trying to really research and look into basin level management. I mean, that was a big thing in the 80s. And in the 90s, we looked also at international water bodies and the water conflict on rivers that cross international boundaries and all this. So we brought more legal perspectives in the publications, as I think. And we were not focused so much on climate change, but we did. I mean, the second second period of my tenure, we started receiving publications on climate change, and we were publishing them already. Although that was like, you probably can count the significant articles into, less than a dozen, over a few years back. One time I counted them because I wanted to tell people that we are engaging into discussion, but they were scientific articles. I mean, they were research, experimental, research from Canada and China and other places. So today, in terms of challenges, I think it's global climate change and its impact, potential impact on water resources is the number one in my mind. I mean, I'd like to IWRA to do more in this area for sure.
Yes, I think everybody wants that too. We're on the same page. Okay, so over the last 34 years, I mean, this is a long time. You say easy, but it's a long time that you've been involved with the organization. What does it mean to you after 34 years, personally and professionally?
Now, personally, it provided a big challenge for me. I really was, enthusiastic about contributing, to the activities and of IWRA, and so that provided a big boost, because the academic work could be so boring. It's like you're always crunching numbers, and suddenly I had much more contact with people. I had much more many more opportunities to learn about water resources problems in throughout the world. I would go to Mexico City and find out about sewage somewhere in a valley, and I mean, really detailed information that you don't really get, by reading scientific journals. And so that professionally, it helped me most, I think, in teaching, because suddenly I would make my classes much more interesting. I would say, oh, here is, Aaron Wolf doing this Middle East stuff, and I knew him, and I knew what more than what he published, so I could tell students, and they appreciated that. So I was teaching hydrology, water resources planning and management, environmental impact analysis, ecological economics, all of those things. I could easily fall back on what was published, and I was sending students to read water international articles that I was referring to, and so that was most helpful in making my lectures more interesting in my mind, because my teaching hydrology is pretty boring, I mean, it's a dry subject, even though it's about water.
It's very basics, right?
Yeah.
But it's amazing how much students appreciate what you've learned from experience more than what you've learned from books, because the association it's much more powerful than the word.
Exactly, yes. I mean, because I could spend 2 or 3 minutes on an episode or discussion with some professional from Egypt, or from South Africa, and it was just, they were very interested, to find out about this, and it's a kind of making it more lively. I mean, another part of my professional involvement, I was also a consultant. I did a lot of consulting, but the subject that I was consulting on was not really covered by IWRA because my specialty in consulting was water conservation, water demand management, and water demand forecasting. And I worked throughout the US and a little bit in South America, a little bit even, I didn't work in Mexico other than giving papers there, but I worked in Colombia and I worked a little bit in Argentina and in the Middle East. So, I was also serving as managing editor of Water International, and those articles started appearing, and because I didn't know how to make it global. In other words, there was not so much interest in other countries in water conservation, because they said, "Oh, you in America, you're wasting so much water, so you need water conservation." But Europeans were not particularly interested, and the Middle East people started being interested. So it was an emerging kind of subject in water resources, and I did a little bit of contact through virtual water. You may recall that there is this concept of water in trade, that instead of, that there's water embedded in products and stuff like that. That was very global, though, very high level water efficiency discussion that we started publishing papers. But that was also new to me because I was doing water conservation plans for Los Angeles or New York. It's a totally different on the ground experience. And,
on the ground experience, but I mean, it hasn't changed. I mean, water is it's nature, right? Nature doesn't
right,
change.
yeah.
So
Yeah, but you have to convince a lot of people, to
that's
do
true.
the right thing. And that was something engineers had no idea how to do. I was originally trained as an engineer. So but I went to study in engineering and geography, and I was studying human geography. So suddenly I had involvement with social psychologists, and psychologists. And so I really appreciated this expansion of perspective, because engineering perspective is, it's to me, seemed very narrow, that way too narrow to deal with water resource problems. So I was jumping on the new multidisciplinary areas with a lot of enthusiasm now, because I could see how that could help for me to make decisions and persuade people. Well, that's a paper I gave in Mexico City, by the way. It's about the water conservation campaign during drought in Los Angeles, when I was talking about social psychology research about how to convince people why would they even conserve water or use less. So that was interesting.
And that's still valid. I mean, the biggest challenge in water is not water, it's people.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Is people, really. Water is, I mean, you don't have to discover anything there. Is people. At the end of the day, they make the decisions.
As they say, it's too much of it, too little of it, or too dirty, too polluted.
And that's it. So
and it's not that hasn't changed. I mean, I was just watching on TV the Tampa Bay retention, pond that has toxic water that's going to spill into the neighborhood. And I think, like, this is 21st century. What are those engineers doing? Why couldn't they build one that would not be, broken through? I mean, it just really bothers me that we are so casual about it. We shouldn't be allowing water to spill into natural sources.
Well, it happens everywhere. I
Yeah,
guess.
it happens everywhere. You would think that in the States,
Exactly.
In a state like Florida, which is like a playground of America, and they still can't control, environmental pollution.
Yeah, the challenges are just getting bigger
Yes,
every day. We're carrying challenges from the past plus the new challenges of this new century.
we made quite a bit of progress and in North America as well as Europe, and gaining more, in Africa and like in China. I mean, big investments in water resources, although the resources in China were abused, to a great degree. Yellow River stopped flowing. So it's or in Asia, like the Aral Sea dried up, almost. So but international involvement in those disaster areas was, I think, at least partially successful, because we brought money and know-how, and try to help, local, regional people to deal with it. The countries involved, like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan.
Yes. Yeah, I guess we are more knowledgeable now about the challenges more than in the past, but we still have to deal with, the decision-making process. How is
Right,
that
and
effective and efficient in the long term, especially.
yeah, and we have NGOs that are of global scope now that keep screaming. I was involved a little bit with the permitting process for building new dams, in America. And I tell you, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers says, Ben, it doesn't matter what you say. Either we give a permit, we're gonna be sued by environmental NGOs, and if we withdraw a permit, we're gonna be sued by the applicant, So one way or another, we're going to court, So said, we don't have outstanding, we don't have interest, we know we're gonna be going to court. But that is not necessarily bad, it's just that
It's
we
part
have
of the
to-
process.
yeah, there's a process, and one side is not gonna like it, There's always people who are not gonna like too much of environmental controls. And of course, we shouldn't be capricious about it or try to do unnecessary things, but the process is designed to protect the environment, period. And so we need to do it.
Yeah, that's the only way.
Yes,
That should be the only way.
correct, yeah.
So,
But all these organizations help, and they change the way we do business in water resource development, for sure.
now, I guess to try to wrap up your message to our audience and to the future generations, young professionals, future upcoming children, women, whatever you want to call it, as the future generation of water leaders, what will be your message?
Yeah, my message, I mostly am thinking about young water environmental professionals, and I think that the challenge is to, the challenges will increase, because of population pressures, developmental pressures, and global climate change. So on one hand, we need more water. We need, safer water. And for people throughout the world, for drinking and agriculture and industry and commerce. And so we need more of it. And there is only so much of it out there. But the global climate change is going to increase also. So my thinking about young water professionals is to join IWRA. It's the best, most welcoming group of water people, internationally, and you can make international networking. You can ask for advice. Any member from IWRA, which I witnessed while being executive director. People were, although I got a lot of letters from the Middle East, and Africa, people saying, hey, I read your research on this, and give me advice. I am just trying to do my thesis or doing this. And so that I always, and I talk to many professionals, colleagues in IWRA, and they all are welcoming, inquiries and people, contacting them and doing the networking. That's very important. The other one is, of course, to not be afraid to walk away from the narrow disciplinary, interests, and not walk away, but expand horizons. Learn a little bit about other subjects. I mean, I became from a civil engineer or environmental engineer, I became a geographer, an economist, and I enjoy that very much. But it has, there is some difficulties involved with this, but generally, I felt good about understanding more about other aspects than just how to build a dam or how to control the river. I mean, or how to drill a well. There is a lot of technical knowledge there, but in water management these days, it's water governance, and we need to do better job. I mean, much better job in the future that we even doing now. And for that, we would need a special profile of water professionals, to make the water secure and available to people and commerce and agriculture. And the other thing is also there is a really practical reason for young people to join IWRA. Young people are really good in social media and all this new forms of communication. I mean, I'm keeping up, but I think it's like if I get in trouble, I have to call somebody. Like,
Me too.
Yeah,
It's over here.
Yeah, exactly. Like
The
what is
velocity, the extent,
no,
the velocity, the scope, everything.
the social media and all this instantaneous communications, they could really increase awareness of water problems. And we have 2,000 plus members in IWRA. We can reach, 2 million or 3 million people, for some initiatives, if the engagement through social media is, and we can get to the mainstream news media through social media. That's what they now are looking at too.
Yeah, that's true. And we need to jump into that train, because that's the train that is driven
and I think
communications.
And I think that there was the young people will. I even thought about it a little bit, and I said they are so good at this sort of new digital technologies that just. I mean, the younger, the professionals like me, we're trying to keep up. These people are inventing it, and creating the stuff, and can do a lot of things that we couldn't do. So I would invite all young professionals to IWRA, students especially, and also encourage IWRA to accommodate it, and provide a forum and to do what needs to be done, so that they don't think it's a waste of time. They can get what they think they should be getting.
That's true. It's very challenging. Very challenging.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
they expect too much sometimes. I am not considering myself young anymore.
I'm thinking like, I needed money, I mean, when I was executive director, I mean, and any amount of money, if I had, I could do good with it, with young professionals, like what what program that you have. It's really hard. Sometimes you have to have somebody, supervising it, like what you're doing and what the staff are doing. it takes personnel to facilitate, activities through IWRA. But hopefully, we'll have resources now, and we'll be able to do all those, to meet all those challenges of the 21st century.
Yes, we are hopeful that should be the case.
Well, I'm positive that the way I see it, IWRA is on its way to do just that.
Yes, I think that too. We should be positive. A lot of challenges, but I think there are more good things coming. And we have the ability. We certainly have the ability. It's just a matter of willingness.
Yeah, and we've been around for
priorities.
We have experience too. We know what we tried and what worked and what didn't work.
Exactly.
And, but looking into the future, it's the hardest.
That's true.
This will help. I mean, hopefully, these interviews with IWRA people about history can also bring this perspective on the future outlook.
Yes. Well, it has helped me personally. So
Yeah,
one more.
Yeah. That's share what we think, from experience, what is coming and what is important for the future.
Yes, and we need to.
Whether we right or wrong, that's another issue, but we'll try.
We need to remember the past. I mean, if we forget about the past, we will make the same mistakes in the future. That's for sure.
I agree.
So thank you. It was a pleasure having you today in this interview, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the IWRA. Professor, I'm going to say your name now, complete. Benedykt Dziegielewski.
Dziegielewski, yes.
Dziegielewski. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's always a pleasure. I am glad to be able to share with you some of my experience and memories